Today, another milestone in Nigeria's power sector privatization process. We saw the National Council on Privatization open bids for 10 of the 11 distribution companies. Of course, we saw 32 prospective investors submitting their bids. And I'd just like to add that last month, the Bureau of Public Enterprise opened the bids for the generating companies. So now we're seeing the distribution companies bidding there. Now, joining me to talk more about this is Lukman Agbolo. He's at Diamond Bank, and he's an oil and gas analyst with Diamond Bank. I'm also joined in the studio by Tunde Bajimo. He's a CEO at PowerGen. Now, let me first start with Tunde. Tunde, joining me in the studio. Certainly, we're very excited about this two processes. We've seen the Transcos, Gencos, and now the Discos. I mean, what's your take on this whole process? 32 bidders, 10 companies. What was the outcome of today's bidding session?
Thank you very much for inviting me here today, Uche. These are very exciting times for Nigeria. It's great to be here. Apart from all the other not so good stuff going on, floods and Boko Haram. It's been a wonderful outcome. What we've seen today is strong teams coming and emerging in front. You can see Integrated shortlisted for 4 assets, and they have partnered with a company called Melapco. They run the Manila Electricity Company. They run 25% of the distribution network in Philippines, and that's the sort of operator that we want to see in Nigeria. Of course, as you know, that SPV Integrated can only win 2 of the discos, so we're likely to see them sort of pick one of 2 of the discos. Most likely, it seems one of the 2 in Lagos and maybe Ibadan. And then, so they will probably end up with 2 assets. On the other side, on Abuja and Enugu, you'll find that there's a company called Interstate, which has been shortlisted for Abuja and Enugu. And so they're likely to emerge with those 2 assets. And you have Vigio, which is very popular in advertising. They're going to win Benin. They've been shortlisted. They need to sort of finalize the commercial side within 15 days, and they will get the asset. But above all, a very transparent process. If you had seen Atedo side this morning announcing the bids, I don't see how it could have been more transparent personally. It's been a very good process, very exciting.
And before I go to Lukman, very quickly, I mean, tell me a little bit about the parameters used to choose these bidders. I mean, you said it's based on how much loss reduction they can bring to this distribution companies, rather than, some of how much they're bidding on. Well, tell me a bit more about that.
Well, basically what BP has done is to set a baseline acceptable loss level for all the discos. So they have this parameter they call the ATC&C, Aggregate Technical, Commercial and Collections Loss. And they set a baseline for all the assets, ranging between 30 to sort of 45%. That's a baseline. And for you to win, you need to provide a proposal to reduce the baseline over a period of 5 years. So the winners would have emerged on the basis of their proposal to reduce the losses over 5 years. And the highest loss reduction proposal would win the bid. So what you've seen is with Integrated, they were bidding something like 21% loss reduction, or ATC&C reduction over 5 years, compared to the nearest bidders who would typically have bidded 18%. That was sort of...
Before we get into the companies, I mean, there's an issue that I think is important to discuss. And I'll just turn it over to Lukman Agbola, who's joining us from Diamond Bank. Lukman, one of the major issues out there, the ability of these discos to perform, especially when Manitoba, which is a company that won the bid for the transmission company, has not even started operations yet. I mean, it was supposed to start last month, but we haven't seen it come into play. What is your take on the ability of these discos to perform, even though they've won those bids?
Great issue which we are still looking at. Some analysts and industry practitioners are still worried that up till now, Manitoba has not resumed when it ought to have done that since last month. Now, beyond that, there is one interesting thing that has played out today. Those who have been in the power sector, for example, Orlando and the rest of them, we observed that none of these discos was won by them, and If you, from what Tunde said, what BP was looking at is 30 to 40% loss reduction, but you are seeing people quoting 21% and all that. Well, I hope they'll be able to do that, because if they do that, it's going to be good news for the country, because that is what BP is looking at. But transmission company that is going to manage the power transmission is a key to their success. You know, in spite of having to reduce losses, you also need to have adequate power supply. And the reason why Manitoba has been selected is because of their track record. And Manitoba is a very, very critical stakeholder in the whole power sector reform.
And very quickly, Lukman, I mean, talking about the prices at which these bids were won, I know the parameters were slightly different. Are they reasonable? And certainly as a banker, how willing are banks to finance these companies that won those bids?
Well, you know, what the banks do is to look at the company's cash flow and the ability to pay over the loan period. Now, what we've seen is that BP is looking at 5 years, so whoever is going to be putting, any bank that's going to be supporting any of these companies is going to be looking at that. Don't also forget that it's not enough that you have won. You are still going to do your technical and commercial evaluation practically, not what you have put on paper. Those are the things BP is going to still look at. But fact is that any bank that is going to look at any of those companies that has won those bids, it is going to be a rigorous assignment. You will need to look at the cash flow to determine whether, you know, the bid they have put in is actually realistic or not. It is on that basis that you are going to see banks supporting those companies.
Right, and I mean, just turning the attention back to Tunde here in the studio with me, there's been some controversy over some of these companies that were picked. You know, some of them seem to be backed or owned by former political figures. What is your take on that whole controversy?
Well, I think it's, you know, the key has always been the operator. And the way BP structured the deal is that the operational risk resides with the technical partner. If you look at Integrated, for instance, their technical partner is a formidable operator and is the leading electricity utility company in the Philippines. So that's the sort of operator that we want in Nigeria. So we're less concerned about who the other investors may be. You know, BP's priority, and I think it should be the priority of Nigerians, is who's going to operate it. And I think that's key. They've got that right now. And it's the right way to go.